Hey, this is Gary.
This is Mike.
And Daniel. We're not professionals. We're just three addicts sharing our experiences, strength, and hope regarding recovery.
Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to other addicts and to practice these principles in our lives.
Welcome to another episode of the 12th Step Podcast. My name is Gary.
And this is Mike.
And this is Daniel.
Guys, we're going to be responding to another listener's email today. This email comes from a new friend of ours. His name is Robert, and he says, I am a new listener to the show. You've mentioned multiple times this group therapy called SAGE. I am an addict, and I've tried every type of treatment program out there under the sun.
Wow.
Every of the ones.
That's a lot.
I bet you have it. He says, my question is, what is the major benefit of group therapy, and how had it helped you guys? Well, Robert, first of all, let me thank you for reaching out. And
let's address this idea of what SAGE is.
Yes,
as well.
that is something. Okay, so SAGE is a group therapy that our common counselor runs, and it's an acronym. I think it says Sex Addicts,
Sex Addiction Group Education.
Yes, Sex Addiction. Yeah, that's that one.
It's funny because I got the email. He'd sent the email, and I looked at that, and I'm like, I'm not so sure I even know. So I sent a text off to our counselor.
Did you ask him?
I did.
I heard it right at the very beginning, but that's been a long time ago. So yeah. But essentially what it is it's a group therapy session that uses the workbooks produced by Dr. Carnes.
Right.
And I believe the first one is Out of the Shadow.
Facing the Shadows.
Facing the Shadows.
And then you have Recovery Zone 1 and Recovery Zone 2.
Correct.
Yes.
And so we refer to the first one is Sage 1 and then Sage 2 and Sage 3.
Yes.
And we should probably have explained that. I don't know if we've ever explained that before. We
that
just
we
keep
ever have
mentioning this thing. So if you want to know what the materials are that group covers, that's where it's found, and that's
Yes.
what we work through.
Which is entirely different, I might point out, from a 12-step program of SAA or SA.
Yes.
Those have their own literature. They follow the 12 steps, typically patterning after AA, and they'll have an entirely different group. The steps are what it is that you're focusing on in those particular things, the 12 steps themselves, and you'll have a sponsor involved and things like that. That is not counselor directed, and
No,
it's
it is
important.
not. And it serves a different function.
It
too.
does entirely.
And the nice thing about the first book, the Facing the Shadows, it does do a lot of foundational work to prep you to be ready to write that first step.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
So, even though it's not step work, the stuff that Dr. Carnes has done and the SAGE group has you go through does help you with some of that step work.
And is based on an awful lot correlation of the steps
Yes.
associated with SAA.
It also does a lot of work with helping you understand your whys, like how did I get here?
Yes.
Why am I doing what I'm doing? So it's more than just a quitting the behavior kind of a thing.
Right.
It's a why,
Getting your life back.
Yeah, it's why did I start the behavior in the first
It's
place?
kind of
There's a lot of that too.
it's a self-diagnostic type thing with the aid of a therapist and a group of other individuals that are going through the same thing you are.
Yeah.
So I think in order to answer your question, what is the major benefit of group therapy and how has it helped you guys? I think let's just take a quick minute and let's talk a little bit about the difference between, and the purpose of what an individual counseling session might look like.
Sure.
What the purpose of group therapy and what that might look like, and
The
how
SAGE experience.
Yes, the SAGE experience,
Yeah.
and then what a 12-step experience looks like.
Perfect.
So, and it's been my experience that the people that I've worked with or the people that I've seen go through recovery, the ones who have the most success do all three. They'll find a counselor that they can work with and that they can trust who has the correct training.
Right. And that's relevant.
Yeah.
That's relevant.
That is relevant, who has the correct training, and then they work through to resolve a lot of their personal issues. And then a lot of the work that they do there will translate really well into a group therapy experience. Now,
My recommendation would be to find somebody who is CSAT trained, because I think that tends to be, in my experience anyway, and I've seen a handful of other folks who are who deal with this particular topic, but unless they're CSAT trained, they may not have all the specifics associated with this topic.
And again, just so everyone knows, CSAT, because we're throwing out acronyms,
another acronym.
Certified Sex Addict Therapist.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. So and that's a genuine school of thought.
Yes.
Taught by Patrick Carnes, who happens to be probably one of the most knowledgeable,
Yeah,
at
the
least
leading
in this
expert,
particular
yeah.
in this particular field. So that's relevant. Getting one with the proper training is really, really
Yes.
critical. So that's the basis of this personal experience between you, the addict, and the counselor that's involved.
Correct. Now, then you go into the group therapy experience, and this is very different because now you've got a trained counselor, therapist who's leading the conversation, and you have a group of people that are going through the workbook and going through the material and working through this process, and they're discussing it. I think the biggest difference, I think, between a group therapy and a 12-step is a group therapy, you're doing a lot of work to understand why and what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And in 12-step, you're doing, I don't know how to say it, not really a maintaining a sobriety kind of a thing, but it's not so much, you're not really delving into the why or how I got
Right,
here quite
right.
so much.
I think there's a couple other key differences as well. First of all, counselor versus non-counselor. I think that's relevant. The counselor is directing the conversation in a way
Yes.
pertaining to the material. Yeah, and the counselor, in a lot of cases, because of that person's years of experience, knows the way to deal with the issues when they come up. In a 12-step program where there is no counselor present, first of all, it's a very structured environment. It's not the sort of free form that you would experience in a counselor environment where you would have a conversation about a very specific topic. In the 12-step program, it is a reading that goes on that then allows a few minutes to share. A really,
Right.
really structured environment so the thing doesn't run away. And I think that's very, very healthy.
Yes.
So very clear differences in terms of what they're trying to accomplish.
And the experience is different too, because in a therapy kind of group, in a group therapy kind of setting, you'll be having a conversation. You'll be talking about all kinds of things. But remember that when you speak, when you're talking, when you're conversing with somebody, that facilitates your thinking. In fact, it's almost the same thing. You're working through your thoughts as you're sharing these kind of things. And in that environment, you can get called out on your thinking errors, or if you say something wrong, or it's like, no, that's not right. Why do you think that way? And that's an experience you won't have in a 12-step
That's
group.
correct.
You're not going to get called out on your stuff in a 12-step group like you would in a group therapy session. And that's not to, I don't want to give you the idea that it's hostile.
No, I
'cause
mean,
it's
that's
not, but-
something I was going to say is, getting called out can be terrifying.
Oh, yeah.
Lord knows I have been.
Spoken from true
Yeah.
experience.
And your first reaction is probably going to be to like, hell no, I'm not going to do this. What gives you the right to do this? But you have to trust that therapist, and those other individuals are seeing something that you're not.
Yes.
You're kind of blind to it because of your own experience. And you have to give room to take that feedback and take it in and try to and look at it from all different angles and like, okay, they're seeing something here and try to, and then you go to your individual session and say, okay, what am I not saying?
Yeah.
I've been looking at this. I've been trying to figure this out. Clearly someone sees something that I don't. Where we go? Where are you going with
in
this?
In fact, that's one of the biggest benefits of a group therapy is opening yourself up to that experience.
Absolutely.
Because my best thinking got me in the mess I'm in.
Yes.
And that didn't work.
That didn't work.
So I'm gonna open up and I'm gonna live this examined life, and I'm gonna share some. I'm gonna make myself pretty vulnerable to a bunch of people who are in turn doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And they're counting on me to call them out on their stuff as much as I'm counting on them to. And it, like I said, some of the groups that I've been in have been just so powerful. In fact, that's how I know. That's how I really got to know you guys was in that kind of an environment, and a lot of the real big breakthroughs that I've had in my recovery have come from that kind of environment.
Oh, it's. I'll be real clear. I felt like I lived a bit of I don't want to say a public life, but certainly visible life to some extent with the clients that I serve and some of the things that I do. And so when I came in to visit the counselor for the first time, I was very hesitant about the idea of a group environment, and he literally stood up and shook my hand. I said, "No, I'm not going to a group environment." He stood up and shook my hand. And he said, "Then we're done here." And so most counselors that I know of anyway, that's about the only way they'll treat this particular addiction is by having that sage, if you will, that sage experience, because we're so connected to keeping this thing hidden and quiet and away from everybody else, and nobody really knows about it, or unless we've been caught and any of that stuff. And so this is a real opportunity for us to bust this open and put it out in the open about what we're dealing with and how it's affecting our life. And I can't think of a better place in the world to have that happen than in a counselor directed group environment to be able to pull that off.
Do you know, it's so nice to be able to talk to somebody about the things you're thinking and feeling and have them immediately understand.
Yes.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Well, and that's what I was going to bring up. I can't tell you the number of times, even with mentoring or even myself, when I've been in that group setting and you watch someone take the chance and admit something that they have not admitted ever. And they put it out on the table, and you can see the fear, you can see the hesitancy, because they believe they're the only one. Everyone's going to think that they're this horrible monster and going to say, "Get the heck out of this room now."
Run out of their hair on fire.
And then they put it out there, and then they see everyone just kind of shake their head, and then they're like, and then I know our therapist will go, "Okay, how do you guys feel about that?" And then people start responding, and it's always in kind. It's always gentle and wonderful. And you just see this person who's like ready to run out the door or jump out the second story window, relax. And then they realize, wow, I'm not the only one.
Right.
I'm okay. Maybe this is a safe place. And then they keep, and the next time comes around, and then they're willing to do it again and again, because that first time wasn't so bad. And I think that's the real power here, is you can put that out there and you can realize it's safe. And then it gives you another opportunity and another. And then you start realizing, wow, I've been throwing my story out there like crazy. And then you start a podcast, and even though you say you're never going to do it,
never going to do it,
and you're just throwing it out there like crazy.
So you're mocking me. You're
Yes.
mocking me.
we're supporting you. It's done out of
I
love.
don't feel supported. I feel mocked.
So, but on a serious note, let me ask you guys this question. Do you think that you would be as successful in your recovery without having had an experience like that?
I don't. I think my counselor knew best that there's no possible way that I could have made the kind of efforts in my recovery without the group experience. I was so locked into the idea that my world was my world, and that there's nobody else that would really understand this in any way, shape, or form. Keep in mind, that's where I met you two as well, right? And it was in that circumstance you happened to be mentoring my very first group, and had that not been happening, you wouldn't be my sponsor now. All those sorts of things that came of that. I remember even thinking in that group, no one's going to understand my circumstance at all. In fact, you weren't there the first night or two that I was there, which meant as I sat there listening to the other people, I was very hesitant. I was thinking to myself, no one's going to get what I've been through. No one will understand whatsoever. And it was your first night there that we made an immediate connection, because there's somebody there that really understood and got what I was experiencing. So yeah, it's a monstrous big deal. I could not have been successful in my own recovery without having that counselor directed experience.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it was fundamental for me. I've seen therapists, and I've stonewalled therapists for years.
Sure.
And it literally was a night in group that really broke me.
Right.
And Mike was part of that. I mean, he called me out because,
and I think I enjoyed it.
I mean, our therapist is like, okay, anyone else seeing this? And I'm just like, what the heck? Anyone seeing what? And Mike's like, yeah, he's already made the choice. He's done. And then everyone else just started piling in on top of that. And of course I'm here in this defensive victim, like screw all of you. But at the end of that session, I packed everything up. I was ready to go, but the therapist followed me out to my car and said my name, and I turned around and he just wrapped me in a hug, and I broke. That's all it took, because I realized, despite what everyone was saying, it wasn't said out of malice, because that had been my experience growing up. And anyone said anything to you is because it was some attack or something like that.
Right.
And he followed me all the way out to the car. He didn't have to. He didn't have to do that. But then it was just love after that. And I'm like, okay, maybe there's something I'm seeing wrong. I'm going to give this another chance. And everyone was still, the next week I came, everyone was super welcoming. And there wasn't like this, why are you here?
Yeah.
You know, everyone was happy to see me and encouraging.
Because it was somebody else's turn in the
That's
hospital.
right.
No, I had many opportunities after that one.
I have too.
But that is the good thing, you know. Not only was my therapist, you know, applying the screws to me, but so was everyone else.
Right.
They were keeping, you know, they were challenging me. They were making sure I was doing the things I was supposed to and moving along. It was a team effort. It was no longer I'm trying to do this all myself. It was now I had a team of people behind me supporting me.
And I want to add those are great points. I want to jump on, first of all, there's a portion of his question that he asked, what is it that we've learned from group experience that was really helpful? And I think you just tapped right into it. It's in those experiences that we make connections with people.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, to have a support group as large as some of these groups have been for us and have carried us through multiple groups, right? I could probably pull together 25 names immediately that I could reach out to at any given time. And
easy.
And let's be, and they all came from groups. They all came from those particular SAGE experiences, if you will. And let's just be real clear. I don't believe anybody can really be successful in this, trying to tackle this addiction alone. It's just flat out impossible. And so having people who understand, talk about a tribe. I mean, these people really understand and get what it is that you're, you know, how you're different, why it is that you're struggling the way you're struggling, that know your story and have experienced that too. And that's put together a group of connections that has lasted me my entire recovery experience.
Yeah.
And that's been a big deal for me. So that's a big issue. The other issue that I think that I you know, as I read his email that he points out is, you know, what's the benefit? Well, that's the first time ever that we started to accumulate and count clean time.
Yeah.
So that isn't something that traditionally goes on in a 12-step environment. I mean, you have an opportunity to sometimes to say, you know, when what your
Clean date
sobriety
is,
date
yeah.
or clean or sobriety date or whatever. But in this SAGE experience, this counselor-directed sex addict group education experience, you have somebody who's keeping you accountable to what's going on in terms of clean time.
Right. Well, yeah. And then they'll like, and if you relapse, and you go in there and you say, okay, you know, I relapse. Then it's like, let's figure out why.
Let's talk about it.
Let's figure out what's happened, and really, really break that down.
Yeah, I mean, our Sage 2 group did something different because we had guys that were constantly relapsing. And so we took a vote and we're like, okay, so if anyone relapses, you have to do a relapse chain and come in and talk about it.
You have to be prepared for
You
that.
have to be prepared. And if you're not, you're going to sit in the corner and do it.
You don't
And
get
then-
to participate.
Yeah, you
in the
don't get to
group.
participate. You can still hear us, but you're going to do that by the end of the class. You're not getting out of this. And so there's a couple people that, you know, they did it. They came in. You know, they weren't excited to do it, but it turned quite a few of those people's lives around.
Yeah.
Some not so much because they came at it with, you know, this aggressive, angry look at it, like, man, why do I have to do this? But those that took it seriously, and they got so much benefit from it because, again, they give their relapse chain, and then people would give feedback, and they would take that as constructive feedback, not something like we're attacking. And it was amazing to see how these people would turn their lives around. Because, I mean, there was one guy, you know, he was my sponsee for quite a while, and I think the longest before that point he had was maybe 7 days ever at a time. And now he's several years clean at this point, and things are really going well in his life. And it's amazing. And it was because of one of those pivotal points. You know, it was like his second relapse chain, and something clicked.
Yeah.
But again, we decided to hold everyone accountable because it was just happening so often.
Well, you know, it also feels a little bit like you're right in the trenches with people too. And
Yeah.
you create these connections and almost like this brotherhood or this fraternity kind of feeling where it's like, you know, I can talk to you and we're working on the same stuff and,
Right.
and I can communicate and connect with you on a level that is very, very different than some
Yes.
other kind of environment.
Right.
You know, as you're working through the workbook or the material or even processing what happened in group or what's going to come up. I remember I've had some absolutely fantastic conversations with me and a couple of the other guys trying to work through stuff.
I don't think you can put a price tag on the value of that group experience, to be honest with you. I that whole idea of processing, there's so many times that you would do the work and you would come in and you've invested the time and energy to understand the material. Today we're going to talk about X. And I've done all the work necessary, the reading, everything else to discuss X. But if we look at it as a pie, I'm only seeing a very small sliver of the pie. And it's so nice to add everybody else's perspective on the pie, if you will. And what I come away with then is if what I took there was a small piece and what I got was the whole picture.
Yeah.
And I think you just can't put a price tag on that kind of value, because you can go home now and at least think to yourself, why did I never even thought of that. But
Yeah.
Gary brought this point up today in our discussion that was so relevant. And Daniel added this piece that makes all the sense in this circumstance. You don't get that. And you certainly don't get that in a 12-step program as well. Not diminishing
not as consistently.
No.
I've had moments like that in 12-step and interacting with people like that, and I've had aha moments, but it's
not as
it's
not as
not the same.
consistent,
It's
and it's
not
not
the-
as deep.
Yeah.
It's never as deep because there's just so little time in that circumstance, and you only get a minute or two to share in a 12-step program because it's so structured.
Have you ever had a really, really, really good conversation with somebody after a 12-step program?
Oh, absolutely.
Sometimes you leave the meeting and then you'll sit around and you'll talk for a minute and you'll really,
You're digesting
you're
even
digesting
further.
that. That's a little bit what it's like.
That's
So-
right.
So it's
That's right.
actually interesting. I've talked to our therapist about that, and that is the most exciting thing about the group sessions. He's told me is when he's turning everything off for the night and he's leaving and he sees everyone outside talking, and it's not he doesn't care what it's about, but it's the fact that they're making connections and they're wanting to stay together.
That's right.
Despite the fact that it is over. And I think that's amazing, because there has been numerous times that I've stayed after and had great conversations
Some of the
about
best.
recovery.
Yeah,
Sometimes
exactly.
they're not even about recovery, but because of that, I've formed a friendship with that person that I still have today.
That's right. That's right. So those are some of the relevant factors of all the good things that come out of that SAGE experience. I don't know how I could have moved forward in a meaningful way without having that. I don't know that I could have. So yeah, those are deep. They're meaningful. And again, the connections that come out of that. You and I represent 6 years of connection. I don't know, 4. I think it's something like that. 3 or 4 with you.
It's 3. It's over 3 at
Over
this
3.
point. Yeah.
But some of those people those are people that I still reach out to today.
Sure.
Oh wow, it's almost been 4. That's crazy.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah. So my point being is that, that creates a bond, that creates a tribe of folks that really get and understand this particular issue better than anybody.
Yeah.
And so when I have a problem, a deep, meaningful problem, I can reach out to anybody and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. And they're always responsive, always responsive. So that comes from those meetings.
Well, and again, like we've already mentioned, this group therapy really deep dives. You get to dig into the roots of your
Yes.
problem, and it's not just, not stop it.
The kind of work and discussion that requires a counselor
Yes.
to engage in.
Yes.
Yeah.
This isn't the 30,000-foot view of anything.
No.
It's
No.
deep and it's meaningful, and it's multiple people who are in the same place talking about the same thing, and it's meaningful.
Yeah.
So good stuff.
Yes.
Good
Find
stuff.
yourself a good one and give it a go.
It'll mean all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
It'll make all the difference in the world in terms of your recovery.
Now, having had this conversation, I do want to take a quick minute because I said I would, and I want to just point out nothing that we've said about the group experience will diminish or change the importance or relevance of a 12-step program in your recovery too.
Absolute truth.
It feels it's a different kind of a role, and you will most definitely have a better chance of success if you incorporate both of them into your recovery.
Absolute truth. Yeah. And highly recommend that you do both.
Yes.
Yeah. Recovery is not a passive activity.
No.
It's just simply not. So my recommendation is to jump in both feet and again, find the counselor. It starts with a counselor. I would suspect that every counselor would have a group experience. I'm not familiar with anybody who doesn't.
Do you know what? If you find a good counselor who's trained adequately and they don't, then make something happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
The only reason that Sage 2 and Sage 3 are a thing is because when I was in Sage 1, I looked at my counselor and I said, do you do a Sage 2? And he says, no. I said, is there a workbook? And he says, yeah. And I said, okay.
Hello.
Guess what? You're going to do one. I says, I'll bully, some
Two
of
or
these
three others,
two or
and we'll
three,
make it a
and we'll
group.
make this happen. And he said, okay, let's do it.
That's fantastic. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I did not know that. That's excellent. So
Well-
yeah, that's really what it's about. But again, if you take your recovery seriously, if this is really what it's about, recovery is about getting the life back that you were supposed to have, right? And if Sage 1, Sage 2, Sage 3, materials can push you through that sort of stuff, by all means, that's what you're looking for.
And I'd also put the caveat there: you're going to get out of it what you put in.
Yes.
Absolutely.
If you're just going to sit there and listen and not do the work and not contribute, you're not going to get anything out of it.
Do you know, I'm gonna take Mike's pie analogy and I'm going to elaborate on that just a little bit.
Perfect.
And do you know what I've had that thought a couple times,
Yeah,
Dan,
so
and I'm
have I.
so glad you said that. Okay, you can think of a group experience like a feast. Okay, everybody's going there with the intent that we're going to sit down and we're going to have this meal. Mm-hmm. Okay,
And we're going to indulge in a whole lot more than we would normally indulge in.
right,
Yes.
like this is a feast. This is like next level Thanksgiving dinner kind of
Right.
a thing. And the beauty about it is that everybody's going to bring something different. Maybe the counselor has the turkey and somebody has the potatoes and somebody has the pie and somebody has your insert favorite side dish here.
Sure.
Okay. But, you don't know what your favorite part of the meal is going to be that night. And I don't know if you've ever been to something like Thanksgiving and your favorite piece of the thing is not there. It's not the same.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So you will get out of it whatever you put into it, but you need to contribute something. And what you contribute might not be the same thing, but that enriches the experience for everybody. And you never know when you will say something that somebody else will never forget.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And whatever it was you said may have been what it was that put it over the top for somebody else. So if you just go all in and you do this work and you contribute, when a group does that, absolutely phenomenal. You'll walk away from that and you'll think of something. It's like, wow, I've heard something today that's changed my life.
Right. Yeah, I think that's good stuff. I remember my own experience. We were talking about thinking errors, and the one regarding lying came up. And I had made the observation that it's possible to be a liar without being an addict, but it's impossible, absolutely impossible to be an addict without being a liar. And we spent the entire night. Well, I felt abused when I was done, I might point out. But the point being is that, lying was such a prevalent part of my own experience that it was nice to have, and literally it was a part of everyone's experience. It's just I happened to be on the hot seat that night and talking about lying. And it was between myself and the counselor and a couple others who were putting some input in there. But I was amazed at what was sort of ferreted out of just the topic about lying, and how that applies in an addict's life. And it was so helpful. But I still have people who walk up to me today, 6 years later from that experience, 5 years later from that experience, and saying, you know what? That was such a powerful night for us. Because that's what happens is that somebody's willing to put something out there that they need help with, and everybody can run with it in a different direction, but it becomes such a powerful topic that it helps every one of us.
Yeah,
It's real life experience that every one of us can relate to.
I can't tell you the number of times I've walked out of a situation saying to myself, I've never thought about it that way.
That's right. Yeah, that's the power of the group experience.
I don't know. I mean, I think I'm going to kind of condense this down. I'm going to say, Robert, you're already participating in a group experience. You've clearly been listening to our podcast. This is a smaller group. It's a setting. We've been bringing stuff up. We're talking about stuff, and you're reaping the rewards and benefits of our little group discussion. So just imagine this on a bigger scale with people that you can actually see on a weekly basis, that you can form a connection with and get to know. And it's like this, and it really enriches your life and teaches you.
Yeah, you're really not wrong. I mean, the only difference is like if we had previously discussed, we're going to have an assignment and talk about this. But especially if you listen to some of those episodes where we have Shane,
Right.
that really mirrors
Exactly
that
what it
concept.
is, yeah.
Yeah.
But you'll get out of it what you put into it, and it's not going to be easy.
No, it's not.
Particularly if you invest in it.
Right.
but it'll sure be worth it. I mean, there's a reason that I looked at my therapist. It was a group experience that made me look at my therapist and said, you know what? You are the perfect blend of gentle healer and sadistic bastard. Do you know that?
I still think we need to get a T-shirt.
We're going to
for
get
him.
a T-shirt.
I can have one made.
Let's make that happen.
I actually believe he's an unhealthy balance between those two. Let's be clear.
Do you know what?
And it only, it's not going to shock anybody which
This
direction
is-
I believe he's
Oh,
leaning.
wait a minute. So we give him 2 shirts. There's that one, and then the other one, and then in the back it says Mike.
Okay, now
It's the Mike T-shirt.
This is very tongue in cheek.
Right.
Okay, but if we were to ever have a merch store, that's in it. That's a T-shirt
I think
that's going
fair.
in.
That's
I
fun.
think That's fair.
And hell no, I'm not doing a podcast.
That's right.
Mocking me again.
Yes. Anyways, we've reached that time though.
Well, that's been a fantastic discussion.
Yes.
I really enjoyed it.
I hope what we had to say is helpful.
Yes, I agree.
And please feel free to write back if if we haven't addressed something appropriately or haven't in depth, and feel free to reach out.
We're used to being called out.
That's right. We've had that experience.
Yep.
So,
If you have a good therapist and a good sponsor, it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
that's right. So, with that, this is Mike saying, do the work necessary to find the peace that recovery can bring.
And this is Gary saying, do the next right thing.
And this is Daniel saying, find the humility in your recovery.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. We would love to hear from you. If you have any questions, thoughts, or concerns, or have any suggestions for future episodes, please contact us at 12steppodcast@gmail.com. That is 12th steppodcast@gmail.com.
As a fellowship of recovering addicts, Sex Addicts Anonymous offers a message of hope to anyone who suffers from sex addiction. Check out saa-recovery.org.